Marvel seems to be unable to do TV shows and is struggling even in their recent movies. Their TV show collection on Disney Plus has mixed reviews at best. Some of the causes of this are oversaturation, lack of talent, or political agenda taking place over storytelling. However, there is something more fundamental to the core of storytelling that is completely broken at current day Disney. Firstly, Marvel doesn't understand that making TV shows is not the same as making a movie. The time constraints and structure are completely different. There really are three main approaches to TV show storytelling. The first is writing standalone episodes, which is a self-contained mini-movie with the basic plot, or a season and multiple season-long story arcs, and lastly, the middle ground, where you have self-contained episodes, but also an overarching story that weaves in and out, and usually have 1 or 2 episodes a season, focusing more specifically on it. Or there is what Marvel does, and take about a movie's worth of plot and stretch it into the length of a season of television. Even worse of all, the plots aren't even that good to begin with. As a result of this, you get a bunch of just stuff happening with a thin storyline. The more recent season of Loki is a great example of this. The whole season is Loki trying to fix the loom from failing, and going from episode to episode, stuck on this single story arc. This story arc should have been 1 or maybe 2 episodes. But what I am amazed is at just how much time goes by where absolutely nothing is happening. You get lots of filler, which is just people running in hallways or having conversations that don't really go anywhere and are there just to fill time. You may have a few cool moments here and there, but once again, these are separated by a bunch of nothingness. They have made some attempts to do regular TV show storytelling. WandaVision was pretty good at first, but then completely fell apart at the end with an oddly backwards morality message. Furthermore, What If or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. seem to be the most well-structured Marvel TV shows, both having self-contained episodes and an overarching storyline that weaves into it. However, Marvel just has way too much going on, and not nearly enough talent to actually cover all their bases. None of the shows seem to be able to come together properly, and are big clunky over-budget messes. Although slowing down still won't help if they can't get the right people for the right job. A lot of these shows on Disney Plus would benefit from having more self-contained episodes. It would actually allow for some creativity and a more tightly written story, and 1 or 2 bad episodes wouldn't ruin the entire season. But it would seem ever since Game of Thrones that every studio decided that one continuing storyline is the holy grail of television. If you have a compelling story like Game of Thrones, it works, but Marvel struggles to translate their movie-making stories to multiple seasons. Marvel could write this type of compelling TV if they had the best writers for it, but it seems that they couldn't be bothered to get the best writers. I've said in a previous video, but the one movie that was perfectly structured to be a TV show was The Eternals. You would introduce each of the Eternals as you did in the movie, but do 1 per an episode. This would give enough time for each of their story arcs to breathe a bit, and then you would have flashbacks periodically throughout the show, then finishing in an epic 2-parter final. But furthermore, not only is their writing structure missing, they can't even get character right. Wanda is a victim for giving up her enslaved town. Loki of the first Avengers movie becomes good by watching a 30-second reel of his life. But most of all, the characters don't seem to have any character growth. I believe this is because Marvel has abandoned the hero's journey in recent years. I know it's a bit of an overused term, but there is a reason why this type of storytelling has stuck for so long. And that is because it is a framework to hit all of the things audiences find relatable in a character's journey. Different versions of it have been explained, but they all follow the same basic points. The hero starts in an ordinary world, then has a call for adventure with some type of an event. At first they are hesitant for the journey is difficult, but a mentor helps them along the way, and they ultimately cross the point of no return. They have conflict along the way, make allies and enemies, then at last they approach the end of the journey and have a great conflict or climax. The protagonist is pushed to a breaking point, but ultimately prevails in the end and is rewarded because of this. They can then return to their old life. However, they are always changed and they can never quite go back to things as they were before. Like the hobbits returning at the end of Lord of the Rings, they will never quite be able to return to the way things were. All of us can relate to events that push us into the next phase of our life, or being hesitant to do the difficult thing, and having to overcome hard times and being changed and molded in the process. And we all have those that we look to for guidance. Even if we don't have first-hand experience with everything on the hero's journey, we can still be inspired by it. Of course, it is structured in a way that is not a one-to-one how things actually play out in real life, because real life doesn't follow well-packaged story arcs. But what the hero's journey does so well is packaging all of the relatable aspects of overcoming conflict into an easy-to-follow story. Let's look at Iron Man as an example. The ordinary life that he starts in is where he uses his hands and talents to create weapons and also lives a life of luxury. Then the call to adventure happens when Tony is attacked and kidnapped. Tony Stark is then faced with a choice: to either build a weapon for the enemy or to fight for his freedom and go down the path of a hero. He has his mentor in the form of the Doctor, and the Doctor teaches him the consequences of his former life of making weapons. And he shows Tony that he can use his mental talents for good. Iron Man crosses a point of no return when he builds the first Iron Man suit. After escaping the cave, he goes through the road of trials along the way, making allies and enemies. Then he almost dies before entering the final part of the journey, where he faces the main villain. He then comes out the other end always changed. Therefore, he can never quite return to his life before. However, this time Iron Man makes weapons for good and not for destruction. Iron Man doesn't follow every aspect of the hero's journey completely. For example, he doesn't have a moment of refusing the call or hesitation. This would have happened in the cave if they added it. Perhaps he would have considered building the weapon for a moment, but then decides to be a hero as the result of his mentor. This could have added another layer of growth to his character. Furthermore, the main villain and conflict is not super well defined until towards the end of the film. Throughout the middle, he's just doing a lot of stuff, but not to overcome a super well-defined bad guy or problem. So restructuring parts of it could have made the main journey part a bit more focused. But regardless, this is just an example to show that Marvel understands the hero's journey, or at least they used to. The point of the hero's journey is not to follow it exactly, but to use it as a launching point. You don't start doing abstract art until you have mastered the basics. Marvel has thrown out all conventional storytelling, and it really shows. Their TV shows are clunky, disjointed, often end where they start, have conflicting moral messaging, and so on. Characters often return to the old life at the end of the journey with zero change. For example, Ant-Man Quantumania ends the same place where it started. Mentors are thrown out or used in contempt like Hulk and She-Hulk. What we often get is just stuff happening in a thinly stretched out plot. I could keep going, but to sum all of this up, I really just have one message for Marvel.
You've got to do better.
You've got to do better.